Hi, this is Ed Fitzpatrick. If you enjoy local politics as much as I do, be sure to join our friends at Rhode Island PBS for the show A Lively Experiment. Hosted by Jim Hummel, the weekly series features journalists, pundits, and politicians debating the stories and issues that matter most to us Rhode Islanders. Tune in to A Lively Experiment and be part of the conversation. Fridays at 7 p.m. on Rhode Island PBS and wherever you get your podcasts. From the Boston Globe, this is Rhode Island Report. I'm Ed Fitzpatrick. Welcome back to the podcast where we bring you big conversations from our very small state. Last July, the Rhode Island Supreme Court upheld Mario's Law, which gives juvenile offenders a chance at freedom after serving 20 years. A month later, Mario Monteiro, the man the law was named after, was finally released from prison. He's here to tell us more about his story and the advocacy work he's doing now. Mario Monteiro, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So there aren't too many people who have a law named after them. How would you explain what Mario's Law is for those who don't know?
Essentially, it allows people who are juveniles or youthful offenders, 21 and under, it gives them the opportunity to see a parole board after serving 20 years. It's usually for people who are given multiple life sentences or life sentences plus a certain number of years. And
you were one of those young offenders the law is designed to help. Do you mind just talking a little bit about your own personal story, how you ended up in prison facing 2 life sentences as a 17-year-old?
Yeah, so the first 9 years of my life, I was in and out of group homes. My mom battled addiction. She ended up contracting HIV. And my father ended up with cancer. He was a smoker. But at 9 years old, they both passed away, one after the other. My father, before he passed away, left custody of me and my 2 brothers to a woman that he had a previous relationship with. I believe, had my father known, the type of way she would have raised me, the things she would have exposed me to, he wouldn't have left custody to her.
Yeah.
But he had no way of knowing this. So she was abusive physically, emotionally. She was neglectful. The way like parents are supposed to nurture a kid, tell the kid they love him, things like that. She didn't do a lot of that as a parent. I was lacking that, and on top of the physical abuse, she, along with her daughter, started selling drugs when I was 10 years old. Crack. Wow. Her son used to sell weed, so I saw a lot of this stuff going on in the house. I used to sit and watch them cook the crack, cut it up, bag it. Sometimes I would help. There were also times that my stepmother would take me with her and her daughter to go deliver it. Because, late at night, 2 a.m, an adult might look suspicious to a police officer and they might pull him over, but an adult with a child sitting in the passenger seat might not be as suspicious. But she'd have me hold the crack in my hand or in my mouth. The abuse, the things she exposed me to, I wanted to get away from that. Kids are looking for, love and acceptance, and I wasn't getting that. So, the closest thing that, that represented that for me, unfortunately, was a gang. And I ended up going to school with some of the people that were in this gang. They recruited me. My time in that gang was probably 6 months to a year. It's not like I had been in the gang for years and I grew up around it. That wasn't the case. It was just these are the kids that I went to school with. I started hanging with them. They started showing me a lot of misguided love and respect and just acknowledgement. It escalated from hanging out and smoking and drinking and fighting to eventually, me getting my hands on a gun, and I ended up taking someone's life.
It was a gang dispute?
Yeah, it was a gang dispute. This gang had been in the city for years prior to me even getting involved with it. So I essentially got myself involved in a dispute, and someone got killed, an innocent person got killed. I ended up getting arrested at 17 and given 2 consecutive life sentences.
So how did you come to terms with what you had done?
It took a while. I didn't really sit there and think deeply about, the life that I took until later on, until I can really understand that and process it. And that took a lot of maturing for me to really sit down and unpack what I had done, the trauma that I caused not only to that gentleman's family, but the community and also my family. It took time.
You're how old now?
40. I'll be 41 tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
What was it like to spend more than half your life behind bars like that?
It was a lot. It's a lot. Prison is, when you go in there at 17, I was I'll admit I was afraid when I first went there. I didn't know what to expect. It's a lot for a young kid to go to a maximum security prison, an 18-year-old kid, and have to deal with people who have predacious intentions, and you're not so sure where all of these people, their intentions and where they're coming from. So you have to navigate that. And you just have to navigate an environment where, you can potentially get hurt if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person. There wasn't a lot of opportunities afforded in the beginning to me because I was doing a lot of time, to take programs. How did I navigate it is I fell back on, my support, which was my family at the time, which is my Aunt D.
Tell us more about her.
Dolores D. Jensen. Yeah, she's my best friend. She's my aunt. That's my mother's sister. She's a blessing to me. All the guidance that she's given me, and she's helped me mature and become an adult, a responsible adult. She's straight and to the point, and she would tell you like it is, and she's been like that guidance that I should have had when I was a kid. Like, Mario, you got to be doing this. You do this, Mario. And she gave me, she told me, Mario, you have so much potential. Like, your worth is this. You can do this. You can do that. Because I struggled a lot over the years and still do at times with, damn, am I really capable of doing this? But she would tell me, Mario, you are.
She believed in you.
She did believe in me.
Yeah.
And everyone needs family and someone to talk to and someone to love them. And she's been that for me.
So let's talk a little bit more about Mario's Law. How did you become the face of giving young offenders a second chance at life?
So in 2016, another person who I was in the same cell block with him at in maximum security, he gave me a list of all the bills that were introduced at the State House. And one of them was a bill introduced by Senator Harold Metz that would give juvenile offenders the opportunity to see parole after serving 15 years. This was a different version from what eventually passed Mario's bill.
Right.
But what I did was I contacted my Aunt D, my big supporter. The first thing we did was contact the sponsors of the legislation, but also organizations that may want to support it. The first time we showed up to the State House to give testimony, my family, really there was nobody there testifying. But we learned over the years, 2017 and 2018, that we needed more and more support. And at the time, I was a part, and I still am, of Black and Pink, which is a grassroots organization that advocates for LGBT plus people that are in prison. So at the time, they were just a small group, but also they were willing to help with the organizing. And we did a lot of this sitting at people's kitchen tables and their living room tables, strategizing to get the bill passed. And eventually I ended up meeting, Representative Julie Casimiro.
Right. She was instrumental in getting that passed, right?
She was, and I met her at a gang renunciation program in medium security. I took a class that allows people to renounce their gang ties, but also talks a lot about trauma. One of the big programs that helped me in my development, that helps you undress and unpack and talk about trauma and really know what it is. I met her at that graduation, and the rest is history. She took it from there. It took about 3 years, 4 years. Even during COVID lockdowns, she was still putting in the effort, still making the phone calls behind the scenes to get this bill passed. I'm thankful for all the other people who introduced the bill the years prior to me meeting Julie, but Representative Casimiro, I believe, just took this to a whole nother level in the effort that was required to get it passed. She really did.
How did you end up being the person the bill was named for? How did that get decided?
So every time this bill was brought up, you had politicians, they like to bring up Craig Price all the time, and that's Rhode Island's boogeyman. Even though this legislation wouldn't have impacted him, you still had some opportunistic, I believe, my words, politicians who would just fearmonger.
Craig Price, for those who don't know, he was convicted of brutally murdering neighbors when he was 13, 15 in Warwick. Yeah, what do you say to those who would bring up Price to say that this shouldn't happen?
First off, if you just read the bill, which most of them probably have never done, then you would have seen that it didn't impact him.
Why is that? Because he's
not even doing time right now for what he was originally locked up for. He's doing time because he got state charges.
It's like parole violations.
Yes,
now,
he's doing parole
fights
violations.
in prison and things.
Them murders he committed, unfortunate murders he committed, he has done his time for that.
Yep.
He got until he was 21. He is doing time right now for state charges, and that's why he's still in jail. And this legislation wouldn't have impacted him.
Gotcha.
And we talked about, naming it after someone other than him to put a face to it. My story is the story of a lot of people who are in there who committed crimes as young people and also have and do change. They have that ability. And that's what the legislation spoke to, and we were trying to get people to understand is people make mistakes, sometimes really bad mistakes like I did, but they also have the capability to change.
We'll have more with Mario Monteiro after a quick break. When you want to go beyond the headlines, let me recommend Rhode Island PBS Weekly. Rhode Island PBS Weekly is an award-winning news magazine broadcast that gives you the full story, powered by investigative journalism and narrative storytelling. New episodes of Rhode Island PBS Weekly drop Sundays at 7:30 p.m. on Rhode Island PBS. Watch past episodes at ripbs.org/weekly. That's ripbs.org/weekly. In February 2023, we had Keith Nunes on this podcast, and one of the first people released under Mario's Law. Why weren't you released at that time?
You'd have to ask the court.
Yeah.
You want my opinion?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe the first person that sticks their head out the foxhole, takes the bullet. I don't know.
But how did you feel about being
sad,
still in there while others were released? Yeah,
I was sad. I was depressed. It was a hard time mentally, because there was the real chance, and Keith sat here and even mentioned it, that there was a real chance that he could go back to jail and the Supreme Court could make a decision.
That's right.
Saying that this law was written incorrectly. So I was depressed and sad and in a dark place mentally, because I thought I wasn't going to go home. I thought I was going to stay in prison for another 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, what did you make of the state's legal argument that you should serve another 15 years?
Yeah, so we're arguing about words. We were arguing about the word any. That's the state's argument. It said offense instead of offenses. We were arguing about whether something was plural or not. Clearly, the court decided and made the right decision. But the word any before all words means all.
So tell me about that moment when you found out you were actually going to get released, that the legal arguments had gone your way.
Well, yeah, I was happy. I was excited, and I still had to wait. I still had to go to court, and it had to be finalized. But I was happy. I was happy when I walked out of prison, but I'm more so happy now than the first 2-3 weeks or even 30 days, because I don't have that stress no more, that anxiety. I'm living my life. I have a job, I have an apartment, and I'm doing great things out here.
Yeah, what are some of the things you're appreciating now?
My family, food, the people that I work with. I work in a space with a bunch of great people. It's hard to duplicate that, and most workplaces don't. And I love it. And I just love living life and meeting people and talking about, my story and talking about the advocacy that I'm doing also.
Yeah, let's talk about what you're doing now. You're at Garden Time, right? Yes. Tell us about Garden Time and what you're doing there.
Garden Time is the best. So they originally started as a garden in the prison, and they eventually grown to providing job training to people who are formerly incarcerated. I participated in the job training, the paid job training, which was great. To be able to come out of prison and take a job training and get money also, was such a relief. And I was hired by them, Garden Time. They have a canopy crew which partners with PNPP, Providence Neighborhood Planting Program. And we plant trees, we're tree stewards, and we educate on trees in the community, especially in the inner city. And I love it. I'm outside, I'm moving, I'm not sitting behind the desk all day.
And you talked about your advocacy. Tell me about that group you were forming to advocate for further changes in the system.
Yeah, so me and 2 other juvenile lifers, Stephen Parkhurst and Kyle Campbell, we started the Rhode Island Freedom Collective. And essentially what we're doing is we're doing the advocacy work that I believe, my words, a lot of these other local organizations claim to be doing. So we are advocating for things that would benefit people who are incarcerated. We're advocating for job training. We're advocating for free phone calls, because the importance of keeping people in touch with their family, is so beneficial to rehabilitation.
Do you get free phone calls now?
One or two on a Friday, 2 10-minute phone calls on a Friday. But phone calls are expensive. They're 71 cents for 20 minutes. Not everybody in there has people sending them money, so it's tough. So we're doing advocacy work. We're new. We're learning a lot, but we really have the passion and the authenticity to be doing this work.
Is there any legislation you're advocating for this session?
Yeah, last year they introduced a bill called the Second Look Act, which would allow people who were given a lot of time, an extreme amount of time, over-sentenced, the opportunity to petition the judge based on so many facts, rehabilitation and new information, to lower their sentence.
What's your message about the potential for rehabilitation in prison?
It's real. There's plenty of people just like me in there. I'm not unique. People want to change. People want opportunities. They want opportunities to work. And how do you do that? Is you provide them with job training. And it's usually job training in the trades, plumbers, carpenters, electricians. And it's also programming, like the right programming facilitated by people who really care about it. So the best program that I took while I was locked up in that prison was that gang renunciation class that I spoke to you about. But why it was the best, not because we talked about gangs, but because we talked about trauma. Everybody in that prison is dealing with trauma. Hurt people. And unfortunately, for many years in there, I wasn't able to take programs that address that. That was the one program that I took that really helped me talk about it. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know how it impacted me. It made me the person I am now. It made me comfortable enough to talk about, my experience. But they need more programs like that, job training and programs that address trauma-informed programming.
Yeah, what more could the state do to ensure that inmates in Rhode Island are rehabilitated when they come out?
I don't know, the budget for the Department of Corrections is probably close to $300 million, but just allocate more of that money towards programming and less of it towards COs overtime. Really, that's all it is. It's a desire to want to help people. It's a desire to really stop listening to the fear-mongering from certain politicians and the Correctional Officers Union about, programming and why we shouldn't be spending money on it. There are people in there, the vast majority are coming home. It would help society and it would help people to give us the tools to succeed once we're out here.
We've all reached conclusions or have assumptions about good and evil. What can you tell us about that, given your experience and given the people you've met in prison and the people you've met since getting out?
Well, yeah, I think there's always going to be people with bad intentions, and maybe a lot of that comes from, trauma, from experiences, or just them being plain bad. But for the most part, people are good people. People learn to be bad, and it's usually when they're young. And that's, in my case, it's about, opportunity. Didn't want to be a gang member and take someone's life. I was exposed as a young kid to a lot. There's no excuse for what I did. It's just reality. I was exposed to a lot of bad things. So my mindset was that a lot of these things that I'm witnessing as a child are normal things. It's normal to steal, to fight, to sell drugs. That's normal. My stepmother, the responsible adult in my life, had me selling crack with her. So, that's how I was raised. And a lot of people in prison are raised in environments like that. So it's just about opportunity and help. It's no coincidence that the poorest communities in Rhode Island, the communities with the worst schools in Rhode Island, make up most of the population of the prison. So you help fix them things, and then you do help in a big way alleviate a lot of crime and a lot of what you would call evil or bad people. They're not evil or bad. They just hurt people, misguided people who need direction.
What would you want 16 or 17-year-old Mario to know if you could talk to him today?
Yeah, there's people out there that love you. You have worth and you have value. Yeah, I was a misguided, hurt kid. Like I know now, I didn't know how to talk about a lot of what I experienced growing up, and I held a lot of that in. And it's not an excuse for what I did, but yeah, I would just tell them it's people that love you and you have value, you have worth, and yeah.
Great answer. Do you know how many people have been freed to date under Mario's law?
I do, and there's four of us. There's four of us right now, but
four now?
There's two coming home, and the crazy thing, and this is what I'm most happy about the law. I'm obviously happy I'm home. There's an individual coming home this month. We were rival gangs.
Huh.
We could have both potentially hurt each other, and we fought once when I first got arrested. But we're friends now. We've worked through our differences over the years in prison, took classes together. We've done it all together.
Wow.
This person was given a sentence where he was never going home. Never. Would have died in prison. But he made a decision to change years ago, before Mario's law was even thought of. So this is why this law is important, because young people do change. People change in general. He made that decision. He's coming home now because of Mario's law, and he's a good guy. He made a mistake, but he did everything he needed to become a better person, and he wants to do similar work to what I do out here. He wants to mentor children and young adults once he gets out. So there's four right now, two coming home soon, and there's probably about 40 people right now incarcerated that would be impacted by it.
So you were in prison for more than 20 years. What do you want to do with the next 20 years?
23 years.
23 years.
I want to continue to be successful with my advocacy. I want to grow in that area. I want to grow with God in time. I want to help grow that organization because I think job opportunities are important for people coming out of prison. And maybe have a family one day and maybe own a house if I can. But I want to use my story for good, and I want to live my life and enjoy things.
Mario Monteiro, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
To see pictures of Mario as a kid and at his job planting trees, go to globe.com/Rhode Island. Rhode Island Report is a production of the Boston Globe in collaboration with Rhode Island PBS. Today's episode was produced by Megan Hall, audio mixing and mastering by Marissa Ewing of Hemlock Creek Productions. Our music is from APM. Be sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'm Ed Fitzpatrick. See you next week. Looking to binge watch all your favorite PBS shows? You need Rhode Island PBS Passport, Masterpiece, Antiques Roadshow, Rhode Island PBS Weekly, and many more. Watch them all, anytime, and from any streaming device. Learn more about this member benefit at ripbs.org/passport. That's ripbs.org/passport.